Welcome everyone to Coffee and an Interview. I'm Jacqueline Pena and I'm here today with Jamie Buzzelle to talk about parenting strategies. This is a new topic for us on the podcast, so I'm really excited. So welcome to the show, Jamie.
Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, we're caffeinated. Now we're drinking some water.
Yeah, we're hydrated, caffeinated, all the things. Yes.
Oh, so you might all be interested in knowing that Jamie is a parenting coach who helps parents find their confidence to be empowered, aware, and more informed while helping them increase connection and cooperation with their children. And, a new topic for us, and I'm so curious. First of all, why did you become a parenting coach? And then what is a parenting coach?
Yeah. So I'm going to go backwards. So a parenting coach, I think the easiest way to answer it, and I think this is the one that gets the most curiosity right up front, because when people find out that that's what I do, they're like, well, so what? Like, you just kind of tell parents what to do and like how to raise their kids. And totally valid question. And absolutely not. I am not here to tell anybody how to raise their children. I'm actually here to just help you make sense of your children and to help you make sense of kind of how you show up with your children. There's a lot of education and information, especially in the last 30 years, I would say, around early childhood development, brain development, and what we now know about how kids develop, how their brains develop, what behaviors are actually telling us about our child's development is incredible. And we've kind of gotten it wrong in the way that we focus on behavior and then reward or punish based on the behavior that we see. And so I actually came to parent coaching pretty naturally. I had a toddler. I have a little boy. He's now 7. But at the time, he was a toddler and he was doing all the toddler things. He was pushing back. He was sassy. He was talking back to me. And, I have lots of friends that have kids, and we actually were a little bit older when we had him. And so our friends' kids were older. And so we really leaned on our friends because they had older kids. They kind of had already been through this phase. And so we were being told, oh, when my kiddo talked back, we put hot sauce in their mouth. And so I was like, okay, I know. So we put hot sauce in his mouth. It didn't work. He would still talk back. And so then we tried timeouts. And I think it was around 45 minutes or an hour into maybe the third timeout of the day. And I just looked over at my 2-year-old, and he's sitting there in his diaper and he's crying and he just looks so lonely. And I just remember this feeling came over me of, what am I teaching him? He didn't it wasn't helping. Nothing was helping, right? So that's the first thing, is that we have to start to recognize that when something that we're doing is not quote unquote working, or it's not garnering the, I guess, effect or the result that we're looking for, as the parent, the leader, the kind of guide over our child, we're the ones that need to pivot, right? We're the adult in the room. And so I really took in that moment, I'm not really teaching my child any skills. And so I just decided to start kind of doing my own research rather than just relying on the people around me, because what the people around me were saying just were not garnering the results that I felt like were working. And internally, there was warning signals in my body that this didn't feel right to me. I felt very disconnected from him. I felt very guilty. I didn't feel like I was doing him or myself a service. And my husband also started to recognize very quickly, these tactics are not effective. They're not doing anything. And so that was kind of the first part of the journey. So I did what I think a lot of parents do. I started following parenting pages on Instagram, and I bought all the parenting books, and I learned a lot, but it didn't really shift anything for me in terms of well, great. Now I have understanding about these things, but what do I do with it? And so fast forward to a couple years later, and now my son started kindergarten. And now he's got more language. He's definitely communicating more. But there's still some challenging behaviors going on. And we still, at the end of the day, I don't really feel like I have a grasp on how to support him. And so we decide that I'm going to get parent coaching, mostly because at the time I was a stay-at-home mom. I was kind of the primary caregiver. And I was really the one that was like, I'm the information seeker. Like, I'm the one that like delves in. I do all the research. So part of getting coached was kind of trying to figure out how to help my son. And when I got coached, it opened up my world to like just this. I can't even explain. It was just everything changed. And it sounds so silly because, you know, you hear these like infomercials or like you hear these times where people are like, my life changed. And I'm always like, yeah, right. Like, how much could it have really changed, you know? But truly, it did. Everything shifted. Everything in our household shifted. My son shifted. His behavior shifted. My husband actually ended up getting coached as well. And I was so moved by what I experienced in the coaching that I received that I decided to pursue it as a career and got certified in the same program that I was coached on. And so that's how it's kind of a long road, but I feel like it all sort of aligned and this was like where I'm meant to be. And, you know, I'm so grateful for it because now I look back on the things that I thought that I knew before I became a parent. And I kind of just giggle because it's like, you know, we're all great parents when we're not parents. And yeah, it just came very organically. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It's amazing. It's very fulfilling.
It's an interesting journey, and I like how you went through a couple different ages.
Yeah.
Starting at 2, and then when he started school and started getting more language skills and was able to communicate better. And I think that there are different parenting approaches that make sense depending on your child's age, because they might have more access to language than they did at another point, a different understanding. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think the strategies that work would be different depending on your child's age. There's something there in terms of the learning process and how much the language piece for those children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely tips and tricks for every age group. And so part of coaching is obviously like recognizing where your child is at in their age. But the underlying core of the type of coaching that I do is relationship based and it's connection based. And it does actually delve very deeply into the developmental stage of where your child is at. So when you're coaching with me, you actually learn. If your child is 2, we're going to talk about, okay, well, what's going on in their brain? What are they actually capable of? Because I think that actually when you look at the studies and statistics around what parents think kids are capable of at different age groups, it's actually pretty surprising how disconnected we are from what we think our kids are capable of versus what developmentally they are capable of. So as an example, I saw this study recently where parents think that by the time a child is around 2.5, they should be able to listen and follow most directions. Developmentally, that does not align. So what's actually going on in the brain, and we know now, is that the prefrontal cortex, which is the frontal lobe of our brain, this is what controls things like our logic, our reasoning. It also controls things like forward thinking, recognizing like when I make a choice, what is the consequence of that choice? So that part of the brain does not even begin to develop. It's literally non-existent until at least the age of 6, most of the time 7 years old.
Wow.
So when you recognize and know developmentally that your child does not even have the ability to think about a consequence until the earliest around 6 or 7, and then that actually continues until the age of 25 to 28, which is when the prefrontal cortex finishes its development.
Wow.
So you even at 6 or 7, if we are expecting children to follow directions consistently every single time without intervention, scaffolding, and scaffolding means things like, where do we put our dishes when we're done with dinner? Those are like helpful things. So scaffolding is like where we build on kind of skills to help kids remember and prompts. It's just a very unrealistic expectation. And so that's really what shifted for me is the science. It's like we now can see into the brain and see what lights up around these parts of the brain at different ages to know, okay, this part of the brain is not actually lighting up. It's not even there yet. And so you just can't really fight that. Now, that doesn't mean that at 2, kids should just be able to run wild and set the house on fire. What it means is that the way that we set boundaries with our kids is very different than when they're 15. But even at 15, they're still in what's called middle adolescence. So middle adolescence is actually between 13 and 18 years old. That's literally only the midway of the development of the prefrontal cortex. So when you talk to kids that have teens and they're like, why is my teen so crazy? Why do they think everything is life or death? Why is everything so dramatic? Again, we go back to brain development. Well, because they're literally only in the mid-cycle of their brain development. And then you add in, when you get into the teen years, this is even more fascinating to me. We have something called the limbic system, which is another part of the brain. So the limbic system actually controls our pleasure center and our risk center. So the limbic system is actually developing, I think don't quote me on this, it's between like 2 to 5 times faster than our prefrontal cortex. So it's actually outpacing developmentally the part of our brain that tells us, slow down, there's consequences to this. So you put the limbic system against the prefrontal cortex in a 15-year-old, that's why they get into a car with somebody when they shouldn't be making that choice about somebody who maybe shouldn't be driving. Or that's why they jump the fence when there's a sign that says, do not jump the fence, you will be arrested. Because their limbic system, that pleasure center, the risk center, is literally overpowering the less developed prefrontal cortex that tells them there's a consequence. And so again, it's not to make an excuse. Children have to learn their consequences. But when you recognize like, oh, okay, like their brain is literally just not there yet, it does provide at least a little bit of context and some compassion. Like, wow, they really do need more support. They really do need us to step in. They still need our guidance. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's just fascinating.
It gives you a lens to look.
It absolutely gives you a lens. That's such a great way to put it. Absolutely.
You can see through this lens at that time and then make better decisions.
Yeah.
Because you have these, pair of glasses to see at that point, you can make decisions as to how can I guide my child knowing information.
Yes. And I also feel like it sort of takes, I think parents get very triggered, and me included. I mean, I'm definitely not immune to it just because I've now become a coach. I have, lots of decades on this planet of my own conditioning, my own childhood experiences that have created my triggers with my son. And that's another part of the coaching that we go into is, well, what kind of created what triggers you? Because everybody has like a different past, and our childhood experiences actually are what are going to inform how we respond in the present to everything around us, because our nervous system is actually designed from childhood. And so everything about our nervous system, it was created before we were even 10 years old. So it's really fascinating. And it doesn't mean that we can't heal. It doesn't mean that we can't rewrite parts of our brain and actually start to calm our nervous system down. But we have to become aware of it first. And so in my coaching, we actually talk about like, well, what's triggering you? What do you believe about what your child is doing when maybe they push back on a boundary? And so everybody has these like triggers or things that they believe. So as an example, you might see a parent with a 3-year-old where they're really upset because my 3-year-old just won't listen to me. Mm-hmm. And what's at the core of the just won't listen to me? Do you believe that they're purposely being defiant? Is that truly what's underneath that? Because let's get into the minutia of listen. They probably heard you. They may just have a different agenda because they're 3. So when you ask a 3-year-old, let's clean up our blocks, they don't want to clean up their blocks. They don't even see it as a mess yet. They're not your age. They don't have your experience and your wisdom to know that blocks go in this. They're just playing. And so when you start to kind of make sense of where they're at developmentally, and then you couple that with, oh, I'm believing that they're being defiant when they're not. They're just being 3. And their brain actually doesn't even see it the same way as I do. You can go, let's make it a game. I'm going to pick up the yellow blocks. What color are you going to pick up? And you can start to appeal to where they're at developmentally. And then that's where we get into, okay, so if I have a 3-year-old and I really need cooperation, I would really advise the parent to lean into play. Kids cannot resist play. So if you can make it fun, you can make it a game, you can dance your way through cleaning up the blocks before bedtime, or you can walk like a bear over to the shoes in the morning to get them out of the house, do it. It's also wiring their brain that when they're doing those things over and over again in a fun way, they actually come to enjoy doing those things. So you're actually setting them up to do things that we all dread as adults to be fun. So over time, you're building these neural pathways in their brains that go, ooh, when I actually make my bed every day, it's fun because we ride the river of the sheets, or we, build a fort afterwards, or mommy always gives me, Zerberts on my stomach, or, whatever it is that makes it fun in your family, they start to connect that to that thing that maybe wasn't so fun before.
I'm listening to the cleanup song in my head.
Yeah. Now, yes, and it's so funny because this is such a testament. Like, kids are so different. So my son never bought into that cleanup song. I mean, he could be 2 years old. He'd sit there and roll his eyes at me. I swear he was like a 90-year-old man in a 2-year-old body. Like, please, I'm not buying into that cleanup song. So we had to try different tactics. And that's another piece of it. It's like every child is different. They have different levels of play. But like, my child could not resist competition. He still can't. So if I were to say, I bet you I can get all those blocks cleaned up before you. You bet your bottom dollar. He's over there and he's getting those blocks in there as fast as he can. He doesn't even realize that he's cleaning because he's having fun while he's doing it. But guess what? I just got cooperation. I just got the house cleaned, and I didn't have to fight him. I didn't have to force him, and I didn't have to use my parental authority to do it. And at the end of the day, if we want to preserve our connection and our relationship with our children, it's on us to decide how we want to have that relationship with our children.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating too. And there are different parts of the brain that develop during different different speeds. There are different ways that we would communicate depending on the age because of that. And then, of course, we all have our personality. So our children have their personality. So what would work for one child wouldn't work for another, even in the same household. So you bring that all together. I'm curious to see what are the differences in terms of strategies when we're looking at different ages. So let's pretend it's the same child, similar kind of situation. A 2-year-old versus a 7-year-old versus a 15-year-old versus an 18 or 19-year-old. How would that look different?
So you want to give me a topic? Let's take the 2-year-old out and maybe start with let's go with devices. That's a common one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's maybe start with a 7-year-old. Okay. We'll do a 12-year-old and then an 18-year-old. So the 7-year-old, considering where they're at developmentally, they're just starting to get that prefrontal cortex online, right? So with the 7-year-old, we're going to really limit their time on the screens. So the first thing that we would do is we would have a family meeting or some sort of, sit down, and we'd say, these are what our values are in our house. We're not going to be on screens for more than, let's just give it 60 minutes a day. So with a 7-year-old, we want to set the expectation that they're not going to be able to actually follow that direction or that rule without intervention and support from the parent. And this goes back to developmentally, they're really not capable of it without support. They're not being defiant. They just don't have the brain power to overcome the desire that they have to keep doing that thing that they're doing. And I actually, even as I say this, I also want to add in, think about us as adults. We all have our devices out all the time. We are always on our phones. So part of it is the pull of the device that we have, but then we're expecting our 7-year-old to self-monitor that and put it away when we can't even put our own devices away. So the irony of that, I don't want to pass on, but I think there's also this misconception around what's gentle parenting is that there's no boundaries and that it's all permissive. So this is a great example of where gentle parenting is actually authority-based parenting. And I'm going to model this for you right now so that people can understand that it is not permissive parenting. So what I would do, and this is what I do with my 7-year-old, because he's 7, he has a Switch, and he's obsessed with it. So he gets an hour and 15 minutes. And what happens is we actually have a timer on it, and that switch just goes off. And that's it. It turns off at an hour and 15 minutes. But let's say you have a device that doesn't do that. What I would do is I would say, okay, we're coming up on, I'd probably give a 10-minute warning. We're coming up on the 10-minute warning, honey. You've got 10 more minutes on your device. And most likely that child is probably not going to respond to you because they're very immersed in what they're doing. So then at the 1 minute mark, I would give one more prompt and say, you've got 1 minute to wrap it up, sweetie. And time actually also, even at 7, still is a very kind of nebulous, just not really going to mean much to a 7-year-old. So you could put it in terms of like 1 minute would be when mommy microwaves your popcorn. I don't know, something like that. Put it in terms that they understand. Now, you can at that point say, okay, your hour's up. It's time to put your device away. If they don't do it, my advice is 2 prompts, and then you need to intervene at that point. You need to hold the boundary yourself. If you expect your child to hold the boundary, that's actually what is permissive, because they are staying on that device and you are expecting them to do it for you. You have a boundary that you are expecting them to hold. You need to follow through on that boundary instead of expecting your 7-year-old, who does not have the same sophistication in their brain, does not have the same ability to hold the desire back that you do, and you need to do it. So 2 prompts, and then I say, gosh, buddy, I see it's really hard for you to get off that device. I get it, but you can watch it tomorrow. I'm going to take it from you. And so I take the device away. I'm going to allow the pushback. Yeah, I know you're mad. I get it. And typically at this age, my son might push back for a minute, and then he moves on. And then we put the device away, and that's it. Now, for parents who are not used to this could be a lot longer at first. If you are coming from a household that used to really suppress and not allow feelings, for a minute, these kids are going to let it rip because they have not been able to express themselves. And so one of the things that I would say to those parents is like, expect at first, if you are shifting the mood in the household and the freedom for children to express themselves when they could not before, it's going to be rough at first. But that's actually a good thing, because they need to get through it. And the more they're comfortable with their big feelings, the faster they move through it and they regulate. Okay, so now let's move on to the 12-year-old. So now the 12-year-old, let's put a curfew on their phone, because now it's maybe it's a video game, maybe it's a phone, but it's a device. So maybe now the curfew is 10. What I would do actually is I would be proactive. Again, even at 12 years old, their prefrontal cortex is still only 5 years deep in like a 20-year developmental cycle. So we're only 25% of the way there. I would actually set that child up for success. And I would either set that device up to be turned off at the time that we need it turned off at, or I would be going into that room and taking that device away. Again, if you are expecting your children at 12 years old to follow rules with something where the desire is too high for them to follow it, that's just permissiveness. We have to be the authority. That doesn't mean authoritarian, which would be, I'm going to take it, and if you can't listen, you don't get it, and you don't deserve it. That's authoritarian. You're just asserting some authority and some leadership. This is our boundary, sweetie. I know that you want it for longer. I'm going to take that phone away. You'll get it back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. It's coming with me. Or you can turn off the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So that's what I would do. Now, when a child gets to be like 17, 18, and they're still living under your house, this is when you need to involve them a little bit more. Again, they are still under your house. They are still your children, but they're older. I think they deserve a little bit more involvement in what's going on. And so I think at that point, you have a family conversation where you give them a little bit more freedom to show that they are able to follow the household rules themselves. And you obviously loosen up whatever that is. So maybe instead of 9 p.m. for a 12-year-old, it's midnight for a 17-year-old on the weekends, 18-year-old on the weekends, and 10:30 during the week. And then you monitor it and you see, are they following? And then after maybe a couple weeks, if you see that they are not following it, you sit them down. And this is something that I also think is important with teens, is that we need to treat them not like children, but we do need to treat them with respect. And I think that setting them up with some connection first can actually make these conversations go better. So my recommendation with a teen, because they're going to come at you snarky, they're going to come at you with an eye roll, they're going to be annoyed immediately, is make sure that you are being responsible for what you notice rather than what they're doing wrong. So maybe make their favorite dinner, sit them down and say, hey, I notice that we have this rule of 10:30 to get off devices, and I know you're not following that rule. What's going on? And see what they say. And, hopefully you have set the groundwork over all these years of trust, leadership, boundaries, and emotional safety, that they can be honest with you. You're right. I am violating those rules. I have a new girlfriend. I want to talk to her. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, that would be tough. I mean, I would want to talk to my girlfriend too. Well, what do you think we should do? Do you feel like 10:30 is a little bit too limiting for you? Should we push it back maybe 30 minutes? We got to have a boundary around it because you need your sleep and I'm your parent. And I need to make sure that you're getting your sleep. So what do you think? Does that work for you? So you can, I think at 17 or 18, they're old enough that you should be willing to work with them, assuming that in other places they are responsible. So, I don't want to also set up like, well, if they don't do other things or they don't have other activities or they're exhibiting other risky behaviors, that you're allowing this. But like, if this is one of the only places that you're seeing something, then you work with them. Or there's logical consequences. So a logical consequence would be, if I see you violate that boundary again, I'm going to have to turn off the Wi-Fi. And that's just going to help. But I don't want to have to do that, buddy. I want to be able to trust you. And you're 17 years old. You're going to be out of the house soon. And I want to make sure that I can trust your word. So can we make an agreement that this is what we're going to do going forward, and have them be accountable to what they said they're going to do. But there's a big difference between sitting down with them and speaking to them in that tone, rather than being like, you are always on your phone. I know that you're doing it. Don't lie to me, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't feel good to anybody. And I think this is kind of where parents become I don't want to say overbearing, but this is where they lose their teens. Yeah. Because teens don't want to feel like they're being babied anymore. At the same time, they're still children, to my earlier point. Like, they are still very deep in their development. They still need guidance. They still need support. But I'm also not a believer in hanging over their heads, that they have a roof over their head, that they should be. That's not, to me, that's a reciprocal relationship. And that's not, to me, how any relationship should be treated. So it's truly about, hey, we have a relationship built on trust. This is the agreement that we made. You're violating your agreement. What are we going to do about that?
I just want to point out your examples, how helpful they are, and helping us see how the strategies would change depending on the age. Yeah. And you can see with the teenager, the conversation, because we're trying to allow them to also develop certain tools and be able to make decisions and have conversations. Two other things I really liked about the conversation so far, in terms of the example you provided in those 3 age groups. One of those was you're really trying to set your child up for success. And you use that term at some point. So you're really trying to provide the tools, the guidance, depending on the age and the situation, to set up your child for success in the situation you're dealing with or you're working through together. And I think that's an interesting framework and a set of lens to use, everyone. Yeah. Your framework of looking at this, setting them up for success. Yeah, that was really, really, really helpful. And then the other thing is just how those conversations shift depending on the age. Yeah, allow your child to really be on the same page with you and be a part of the conversation. Have some power, him or herself as well, in terms of the response and how it'll work. And very interesting. And I love the being an authority versus being authoritative. I think those are some great examples to help us understand also how to approach the different situations depending on the age.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pushback right now around gentle parenting, and I do actually understand the pushback because it's not understood. And that's the biggest thing, is that I think people that are afraid to maybe not parent the way that they were parented are so scared that they're going to quote unquote do it wrong that they end up moving towards permissiveness. So in those situations, that would look like the 7-year-old throws a big fit. They're so mad, so you're like, oh, fine, you can have another hour. Yep. And then at that hour, you can have another hour. And then you've created this monster that is addicted to their devices. And this will get worse as they get older. We cannot be afraid to be the authority. And actually, children need it. They need boundaries. They need guidance. One of the ways to tell if children are actually in an environment that's a little bit too permissive is they are incredibly dysregulated. They typically have a lot of behavioral issues because they need boundaries to feel safe. But boundaries are very different than rules that we expect children to follow without guidance. And so that's the part that I think why coaching can be really helpful, because otherwise you're just sort of floating out there. I mean, there's no guidance, there's no manual for parenting. And so when you think about what goes into raising a human being to be a member of society who is going to contribute, who is going to be kind, who is going to be emotionally intelligent, who is going to have a job, who isn't going to live in your basement until they're 65 years old. And then you also maybe want them to like care about others, maybe contribute to a charity from time, like the list goes on, right? And it becomes incredibly overwhelming. Like, why isn't it more normalized that parents get a coach? Mm-hmm. Sports athletes get coaches. We have business coaches. We have nutrition coaches. We have leadership coaches. We have fitness coaches. This is no different. This is a cheerleader that will literally give you the tools that you need to be the successful parent that you want to be and actually have it feel more fun, feel more connected, have more joy. And truly, that's what this is about. And so I think that there's also this like misunderstanding with coaching for parents that like we're coming in to like shame you or tell you all the ways that you're doing it wrong. And it's like, no, the first thing I'm going to ask you is like, what do you envision as your relationship with your child? What kind of parent do you want to be? And then let's work from there.
I like that, because now we're changing it to the kind of parent you want to be. I want to, before we move into that piece of it,
sure.
I want to also point out that you give children the tools to express themselves, to go through emotions. And I didn't get touch up on that before, but a lot of times if we don't have those opportunities and that guidance in how to work through our emotions, it just makes it a lot more difficult when we're older. And I speak for myself, where sometimes I struggled as an adult with trying to communicate how I'm feeling or why I'm behaving a certain way or why something bothers me, because I didn't have a lot of those opportunities to work through my emotions.
Yes.
So that's another piece on the child side of parenting. But now we're coming to the parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And what we can get out of these strategies as parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's truly all about the parent. Truly. I mean, now the wonderful side effect or the down trickle is the child gets all the beautiful things that the parent learns and the regulation that the parent has. And when a parent shifts, the child will naturally shift because they are taking all of their cues from us. And that's what attachment science is about, is that natural attachment that they have to us. When we show up in a certain way, they are going to meet us at that because they don't know any different. They don't know anything outside of us. And so this goes on forever. And it actually really does inform our attachment to our primary caregivers, informs how we are as adults and every relationship that we have moving forward. And so that's not to put pressure on anybody to go, oh God, well, what was my attachment like? But making sense of it and understanding, what was my attachment to my parents growing up? How do I show up in my relationships? Was I secure? Am I anxious? Do I get nervous? Am I triggered? You have to be aware and understand how you show up in a room and how you respond to things, because unfortunately, good, bad, or indifferent, your kids are picking up on it.
Yep. Yeah. And that self-awareness, I think a lot of times we were parents and, we were
Yeah.
children, we had
Yeah.
parents and
Mm-hmm.
we lived our lives and we made our decisions. And a lot of times it's go, go, go. And we don't take the time to look at that self-awareness in terms of who are we as parents now? Who are we as humans, not just parents, but in all sense? And why do we believe certain things? Why do we act this way? And then it comes down to, well, now that I know this also, what kind of relationship do I want with my children?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that you can kind of choose, you can choose the kind of relationship that you want with your child. I just also think that when you choose that, you have to be able to live with the consequences of that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you make a choice when children are young to raise them in your household by your rules, it's my way or the highway, there may be some consequences when your children get older and they no longer rely on you. There may be a fallout. There may be repercussions to that. We've seen a massive uptick in estrangement around adult children with their parents because they are recognizing that they grew up in environments that were not so healthy for them, and they're feeling the weight of that as adults. And so it's not to, I'm not trying to like shame or put fear into any parent. It's more around children are not property. They're not chattel. They're human. And they are not something that is an empty vessel to be filled. They actually come to us with a personality, and it is more on us to help guide them and witness who they were meant to become and give them the structure of love, support, and emotional safety so that they can be who they were always meant to be, not who we think they should be.
I love that. I love that idea. And how do we support them and help them be who they're supposed to be?
Yeah. Yeah, my son is very he's got a very big personality, and I just don't ever want to break that. He's tough to parent sometimes. I'm not going to lie. I get frustrated, and again, I have all those tools, but I'm human and I lose those tools sometimes. And I still, I repair with him quite often. If I'm being honest, I'm like, I'm sorry, that was not about you. That was totally about me. And this was about my stuff, not your stuff. And one of the biggest things is modeling for him that it's never his fault if I get upset or lose my proverbial what, that's on me, that it is never the responsibility of another human being for how we show up and how we react, that we have to be responsible for our own behavior, our own feelings, our own needs. And I want my son to know that. And I also want him to know that he is allowed to take up space in this world, that who he is as a human being should never be stifled. And he's got a spirit. Every child does. And if we want to see that to its fullest potential, we cannot break that spirit when they're children. And that's the biggest, to me, most important part of it, is preserving that.
And I like that idea of sometimes you have to go back and have that conversation, repair.
Oh yeah.
A situation or something that occurred because of a reaction that we should have held back. And that's another key piece, is making sure that you have those conversations, because it does provide tools for when he does something and he knows that he was in the wrong.
Yeah. Yes.
Some tools to be able to have that conversation with another person.
Yes. And so much of what children learn is through modeling. And so, if we're not modeling our pleases and our thank yous, being kind to service people out in the world, if we're not modeling apologies, if we're not modeling taking accountability, these are the things that truly move the needle with our children. And so you can sit there and give them all these lectures and make sure you're saying your pleases and thank yous. But if you're not doing it, it's going to be a lot harder for them to learn it, because this is just how kids learn. It's much more immersive, and rather than theoretically just sitting down and prompting them constantly. That actually a lot of that prompting actually becomes noise to them, and they're like, yeah, I know. They just think about it if I think about when I am prompted or when I am reminded of something, I'm like, all right, I get it. And I'm not even, a defiant human being. I'm actually a rule follower. But then you add in that maybe there's a lot of children that are they're not much rule followers. They're not actually intrinsically motivated by that. And then you've got a whole other wealth of things going on. So if we want to have that influence and we want to have that respect and that leadership that we want to embody for our children, we have to be modeling all of that for them.
I think modeling is such an effective tool.
Yeah.
For your toolkit for parenting.
Yeah.
Many other things in life. It's just
yeah,
it's an effective tool. We talked a lot. It's funny. One of the questions I was going to ask you, you've been answering it all along, which is about the parenting strategies that you create and how you develop them, where they come from. And you're very research based. So along the way, you're always talking about different things in terms of our brain development and different things about behavior and tied to age. Very research based. Do you want to say anything else about parenting strategies and your research base or foundation for the work you do?
So the program that I do is actually a 12-week program. And so I think one of the things that is really important is that change takes time. And I know that hearing like 12 weeks, but if you think about it in terms of a season, it's a season of your life, right? So, between now and Christmas, you could have a completely different relationship with your child. And that to me is like incredibly powerful. Like how motivating to know that like with 1 hour a week with a coach, by Christmas time, you guys could be like not battling each other anymore. You could have more cooperation. You could actually be excited to see your children all the time instead of dreading it because you're fighting a battle, or maybe it's constantly over gaming, or maybe you have a teenager that you're not connecting with. I think about this one mom, actually, if I could tell just like a quick story. This mom that I coached, she has 2 boys, they're teenagers, and the oldest one was 18, still living at home, addicted to games, and basically never came out of his room and was getting ready to leave to go to the military. And she was hopeless. And when she came to me, she actually came to me because she wanted to get him in line. She was like, just tell me whatever I need to do to get him in line. He's disrespectful. He doesn't, we fight all the time. And I just feel like when he goes off to join the military, I'm going to lose him forever. But I'm tired of him just sitting in his room. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't follow any directions. And all we do is fight. And she learned pretty quickly with me that like, no, this isn't behavior modification for your 18-year-old. It's actually going to start with you, Mom. But it takes a little bit of time. Yeah. And so the first few weeks was really kind of digging into her past and understanding where she came from and what she believes about the behaviors that were happening. But here's what I did prescribe for outside of our 1 hour sessions every week. I said, I'm guessing that your relationship with your teen is pretty transactional at this point, meaning when you do speak to him, it's very like, did you do the laundry? Did you empty the dishwasher? Did you take out the trash? And he's saying, no, 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 no. He closes his door on you and that's it. And she's like, yep, that's it. We don't really talk. And I'm like, okay, cool. So let's take that off the table for now and trust that you will come back to it. But just trust me in this process. You have no influence and you have no relationship with him anymore. And nobody is motivated to do anything for anybody that they don't have a relationship with. So I said, I just want you every day to knock on his door. And if he lets you in, go into his room and just sit there. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. And at first he's going to be really weirded out because he's going to think that you have some sort of an agenda, and that's okay. And if he asks, like, what are you doing here? If he's prickly, don't take any of that bait because he's now got all these walls up. You are the adult. So you can't take that bait. You're the adult. You need to be the one that models what needs to happen next. So if he says, what are you doing here? Just say, I just love you. I just wanted to spend like a minute with you, and just keep it super short at first. So she was like, all right, I don't even know. So the first couple of times he actually didn't even answer the door. But like by day 3, I'm like, she would text me. I'm like, you can text me. I'll give you a pep talk every time. It's okay. And I think it was like day 3 or 4. He finally like opened the door, like didn't even look at her, just turned around, whatever. I don't know what she wants. So she started to come in and sit down. And I would say it was about midway through our 12 weeks together. I was getting on the freeway. I will never forget it. And she called me and she was in tears. And I was like, oh God, like what's happened? What did I get wrong? Like, in my head, I'm like panicking. And that's like my own conditioning of like, what have I done wrong? And she's like, Jamie, you'll never believe what just happened. He just invited me on this. He has this, I won't give it away because I want to be very like respectful of, all of her privacy, but he has this particular hobby outside of the house that she's never been included in ever. He invited her to join him on this hobby. So what had been happening, and I'm jumping all the way to the end because it just was this moment of like, I started crying, she was crying, like it was so cool. So those little moments turned into a little chat, turned into him coming downstairs, turned into him having dinner, turned into him watching TV with them, turned into him starting to do his chores again. It all starts with connection, Jacqueline. I cannot tell you, that's the only thing I told her to do. And then, of course, she was doing the work. She was understanding her part of it. Of course, that's what she was doing with me. The only thing that he experienced was his mom showing up for him as a human. And everything shifted in 6 weeks. And we are talking about years. They had not gotten along since I think things started to fall apart when he was around like early adolescence, 12 or 13, if I remember correctly. So I don't even want to say it's the program. This is what humans are wired for. We are wired for connection. All I do is give you the tools to learn how to connect. That's literally all I do. And it's my honor to do it. And I love it so much because there's really not a way that when you commit to connecting with your child again, that you will fail. Because it's not behavior modification. I am not giving you just a bunch of stuff that's like, oh, well, when your toddler does this, go do this. No, I'm teaching you how to connect with your child as a human being. And you cannot fail when you do it that way. 100% of the time.
Connection. That's the word. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the notes from the introduction to the session today. Mm-hmm. And in your introduction, we talked about increasing connection. Connection was there from the beginning of our conversation, and it's there now as we're wrapping up the interview. The importance of connection and the tools to build that connection as the foundation of that parenting strategy.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing conversation, to be honest, and the work that the strategy you provide is about work that we have to do with ourselves first. Yeah. So I thought that was very enlightening, and this concept of connection as the foundation for the work. I wanted to see if there was anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't get a chance to ask you at any point today.
Ooh, I feel like we covered a lot. I think, connection is king. Always lead with connection and curiosity. When in doubt, get curious. I think maybe that's a good takeaway. If you don't know what to do, if you're stuck with something with your child and you just are like, get curious. Stop, breathe, and get curious. And what I mean by that is like, okay, what's coming up for me? I wonder what's going on for them. We also make a lot of assumptions in behavior, and we like make up these stories and then we don't even check them out. And so a lot of times, like when I hear what's going on between a parent and a child, especially with teens, well, have you checked that out with them? Do you know that they don't respect you? Oh, no. I mean, that's just what they're showing me. Okay. Maybe we should have that conversation because I would bet that's not true. So get curious. When in doubt, get curious.
I like that. I feel like we're making t-shirts. Connection.
Yes. Have like a little crown. Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that insight and for that final bit of advice that you provided. Tell us, how can we learn more? For those of us who are curious and want to learn more, give us some information about how we can learn more, how we can find you.
Yes. So my business name is the Reparent Coach. So talking about repair, it is spelled just like the word repair, like as in you're repairing a car or you're repairing a device. So it's the Reparent Coach. And that is my handle on Instagram, at the Reparent Coach. It's also at the Reparent Coach on Facebook. And then if you would like to learn more about my services or reach out to me about either, one-on-one coaching or even group coaching, I offer both. It's www.thereparentcoach.com.
And thank you so much. And for our listeners, this information is also in the description for this episode. So you'll be able to just click on the link or copy and paste into your browser and check it out. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. This has been an amazing conversation. It's the first time we get on the show and talk about parenting strategies and concept of the connection is king, right? Connection is king, and when in doubt, get curious, and everything else that came through in our conversation today. Thank you so much for all the insights and for being on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was great. We went really deep, and I love it. I could talk all day about it, so I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And I definitely learned a lot, and I hope that you learned a lot as well.
I hope so. I hope they took some nuggets away. Yes.
Some great nuggets of information. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to the episode here with Jamie Buzzelle on Coffee and an Interview. It's been a pleasure having you, Jamie, here. And again, all the resources, all the information is in the description for all of you. So please click on the link, check out the website, and ask questions if you have questions. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.